Hey there YouTube, Charles here. My bike, she's pissing oil. Well, not pissing, dripping rather. And I think I know why. As you can see, we're partly disassembled here already. And as I'm riding, oil is getting lightly sprayed along this exhaust pipe here and on the bottom of my boots and the brake lever and the clutch cover. It's not a torrent, it's not a stream, just a few drips every once in a while, but they add up. And I notice after I come in from a ride, I get a little bit of oil dripping off of this thing here. I thought that I had some bad seals behind this. This is just a plug, I think, where an oil cooler line goes. I replaced the O-rings inside here to no avail. Still leaks. So I moved my attention up, and it turns out that this, behind this mechanism, is an oil seal. It goes around the crankshaft. That I presume to be bad. I have a new one. I'm going to try replacing this. It looks like it could be a challenge because it's held in by this case. I don't know if you can see it. The brown stuff is like case sealant. So I don't know how easily that's going to come out. I guess we'll see. My next step is to take out this bolt here, and then this has to come off. And then the advanced mechanism, which is this doodad here, changes the timing depending on engine RPMs. So, according to my good friends at the GS Resources, this bolt needs to come out next, and it's got some Loctite in it, or something, and I need some heat in order to get that off, and it's a normal thread. So, I'm going to have it that. Success! So what I did was I heated up this bolt with this hair torch, and put the engine in, the transmission in second, stood on the rear brake, lefty-loosey, and she broke free. Good news! Now I just got to remove this bolt, which is luckily still kind of hot. It's not burning me too bad. That's longer than I expected. Hot, hot, hot. And then that came out. That's nice. And then the advanced mechanism comes out somehow. I'm going to need to let these parts cool down a bit so I can figure out how this comes off. But okay, I got the advanced mechanism off, and you can fairly easily see, at least I can, that we have oil leaking around the inside here. So, pretty easy to see. Now my next challenge is how do I get this bloody seal out. I think what I'm going to do is maybe run a sharp blade along this outer edge here, just to kind of break this case sealant, at least along the outside, so there's not as much to pull against. And then I think I'll drill 2 or maybe more small holes where you see these tiny squares. That should be pretty much in the middle of the seal, and I have the new one. There shouldn't be anything immediately behind that, I hope. And I'll run some screws in there, and hopefully that'll let me pull it out. And success! This came out pretty easy, actually. I didn't even drill. I just like drove in a drywall screw into one of these little squares here, not very far, and gave it a good tug. I used some leverage too with the pliers, and it pretty much just popped right out. It turns out this case sealant is really just along the outside of the seal. It's not held in there with the sealant. I guess the sealant is just a little bit extra protection added at the factory. I don't know. But it's out, and old one's out anyway. And what we have back here is, for some reason I was expecting this to be the like the inside of the crankcase, but there's another little wall here in behind. So if you do go drilling a hole in or putting a screw into that seal to get it out, do not go too far. You'll go right into this little wall here. It looks like that's an oil galley or something. Presumably this area back here fills up with oil to keep this bearing, which you can see in between the crank and the case, keep that lubricated. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Try to get a little bit of this case sealant off, or at least around the edges, and there's a little bit of, I don't know, some kind of black gunk. I think that's a remnant from the seal. And then the new one will hopefully go in without any bother. I cleaned this area up pretty good, so I think my next step now is going to be, this is my new seal, by the way. New seal. Not expensive at all. I heart Suzuki. And I think what my next step is going to be is I'm going to put some grease on this inside, I don't know what you call it, race maybe, and some grease along the crank, end of the crank here, to kind of lubricate the seal as it goes on. And then I think once I have it in, I'm going to try to press it in with my fingers. If that doesn't work, then I'll have to go out of my way and make a trip to the hardware store, or scrounge up a section of pipe so that I can run it in with the bolt that I took off at the end of the crank. But first I'm going to try to just press it in with my fingers and hope for the best. And then once it's in, I'm going to put a little dab around the edges of blue RTV, just to kind of anchor it in there a little bit, like the case sealant was on the old seal. I think that'll help, because there's nothing mechanically holding the seal in except for its own friction along the outside. So now RTV will make me feel a little bit better, even if it doesn't actually do much. So anyway, here I go. Wish me luck. Now this is a perfect example of why I don't throw out old bolts and washers and fittings and stuff. You just never know when something like that's going to come in super handy. In this case, I was all geared up to go to the hardware store. Oh, I need a little section of pipe. Oh, I need a big old washer. Well, I started looking around, and guess what? I have such things already. This is a plumbing fitting. I have no idea what size. But I seem to remember, like, I bought it for rebuilding the forks, for driving in the fork seals on my 850, and repurposing it for this. It is just exactly the right size, both in diameter and in length, because now I can use the crank bolt on the end here to drive it in. This should work pretty sweet. Seal is in, RTV is applied. I was advised on the GS Resources forum that I probably did not need case sealant or RTV. My opinion is that it left the factory with case sealant around that seal. Maybe they did it for a reason, maybe it was just insurance, I don't know. But I put some on. The only bad part about this is that this ATV takes 24 hours to cure, and which means I'm not riding this bike today. Maybe I'll ride it tomorrow. I will for sure ride it tomorrow, because I want to know if this fixed the leak or not. As to the old seal, I don't really see like an obvious failure, like tears or excessive wear. It was leaking around the inside here, where it comes in contact with the end of the crank. The only thing that I can see that might have reason why it's caused a leak is you can barely see how the seal is more compressed down here than up here. I'm not sure what would have caused that. It might even be more worn and it's just really hard to see, but I don't think it's wear exactly. So I'm not sure exactly why this leaked. Hopefully the new one does not. I guess I'll find out. According to the manual, what I've been calling the crankshaft bolt is the governor center bolt, and the proper torque value for that is 9.5 to 16.5 foot-pounds, or whatever the unit of measurement is called. So I've taken my torque wrench and set it to, I went roughly in the middle, 13 foot-pounds, multiplied by 12 to get 156 inch-pounds. So that's what I'm going to use to tighten up this governor bolt, which and how I'm going to keep the crankshaft stationary is I have the bike in second, and I'm going to stand on the brake while I tighten it. Ignition cover's back on. Case guard is back on. Cleaned up all the oil, traces of oil, and so it's all buttoned up, ready to go. The only thing I have to do now is wait for that RTV to seal or to cure. I probably wouldn't have to, but I want to, just to make sure the job is done right. The worst part about this job, believe it or not, is getting this case saver back on, because the bolt that they have, or rather the nut, goes up underneath the into the case, and it's not like a hex head bolt. It's a weird teardrop shaped one, and it is almost impossible to get lined up properly with this bolt here when you're sticking it in. So that was like a 20-minute job just getting one bolt in. I think I finally have a good system. Hopefully I don't have to take it out again. This is a motor mount bolt, by the way. So yeah, tomorrow I'll take the bike out and we'll see if that fixes the oil leak. That would be nice. Okay, it's been 24 hours. Well, not quite. Close enough. And this ATV, or rather RTV, has had a chance to set up, I hope. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit of paper towel down in here before I put the stator cover back on. Not the stator cover. What is wrong with me today? The ignition cover back on. And by putting some paper towel in this little nook right here, that'll tell me if I'm leaking oil. There may be just a smidge, like a drop or two. Well, actually I don't see how that could happen because I cleaned it out pretty well. If there's any oil on the paper towel after I get done from a ride or whatever, then I know that it's still leaking and I'm in for a world of pain. So, we'll see how it goes. And now the exciting conclusion. Did it leak? Nope. Apparently not. It's dry. Dry, dry, dry. Alrighty. Calling this one a win.